The Long Game, Part 1. The Discovery, Chapter 1. The Realization. Charlotte had always been observant, attuned to the subtleties that most people overlooked. It was a skill honed over years of managing people, personalities, and expectations in her life. Her husband, Adam, was no exception. For years, she had known his quirks, his habits, the small rhythms of his daily life. That was why, when those rhythms began to shift, even slightly, she noticed immediately. At first the changes were subtle, almost too small to warrant suspicion. Adam had always been careful with his phone, but now it never left his side, even when he was home. When he placed it on the table, it was always face down, hiding the screen from view. Charlotte told herself it was nothing, that maybe he was just being more careful at work. But it wasn't just his phone. He had begun to travel more often, taking work trips to cities that seemed too frequent for his current job. There were no noticeable shifts in his income, no new business ventures that would explain the uptick in travel, yet he always had a ready excuse: new clients to meet, conferences to attend, networking events that required his presence. Each time he left, he offered vague details about the trip, never giving her more than she needed to know. Still, Charlotte said nothing. There was a growing distance between them, a gap that she couldn't quite place at first. Conversations that had once been easy and fluid felt stilted. Adam, once engaged in their shared life, had become distracted, as though his mind was elsewhere, even when he was physically present. He spent more time at work, less time asking about her day. There was an emotional disconnection that lingered like an invisible wall between them. But Charlotte wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. She believed in facts, in evidence, and in being absolutely certain before acting. So she waited, watched, and gathered information in silence, knowing that the truth would eventually present itself. It wasn't until a quiet Tuesday evening that Charlotte's suspicions finally solidified. Adam had gone to bed early, after claiming he was exhausted from yet another long day at the office. Charlotte finished washing the dishes and tidying up the kitchen before heading upstairs herself. As she entered their dimly lit bedroom, she saw Adam's phone on his nightstand, its screen still glowing from a recent message, a text message. Something about that moment felt different. Her instincts screamed at her to look. Charlotte glanced at Adam, who was fast asleep, his body turned away from her. She hesitated for only a moment before reaching for the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. Her fingers shook slightly as she swiped open the screen, her stomach twisting in anticipation of what she might find. Adam had always been meticulous about locking his phone, but tonight he had been careless, forgetting to set the lock before drifting off to sleep. There it was, a string of messages between Adam and someone named Emily. The messages weren't just casual exchanges. They were intimate, filled with inside jokes, affectionate nicknames, and references to shared moments that should never have existed. Each message felt like a stab to her chest, but Charlotte's face remained calm, her breath steady as she scrolled through them. The texts were playful at first, light flirtation, teasing remarks about their secret meetings, and then they grew more explicit, more personal. There was talk of sneaking away together, references to hotel rooms and late-night rendezvous, promises of future encounters. One particular message sent a cold wave through Charlotte. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." Her eyes lingered on that message, letting the weight of it settle over her like a heavy blanket. The room felt colder, the air stifling, but she forced herself to stay calm, her mind sharp despite the emotions swirling inside her. Charlotte read each message methodically, absorbing every word, every reference to a life Adam had been living without her. The affair wasn't new. These messages dated back months, possibly longer. She could almost hear the laughter in Emily's messages, the flippant ease with which they communicated, as if Charlotte didn't exist at all. And in a way, she didn't. Not in their world. A wave of nausea passed over her, but Charlotte took a deep breath, exhaling slowly as she processed what she had found. This was the proof, the confirmation she had been waiting for. It was one thing to suspect, but seeing the betrayal in black and white, laid out in front of her like a terrible truth she couldn't ignore, was something entirely different. Yet, in that moment, Charlotte didn't feel rage. She didn't feel the need to scream or confront Adam. That wasn't her style. Confrontation would be too easy, too immediate, and too satisfying for Adam. No, this required something deeper, something that would last. With careful precision, she closed the messages and placed the phone back exactly where she had found it. The screen dimmed, casting the room in shadow once more, and Charlotte stood there for a moment, staring at the man she had once loved without question. He slept peacefully, unaware that his secret life had just been exposed. But Charlotte was no longer the same woman she had been before reading those messages. Something had shifted inside her, a cold, calculating resolve taking root. She had the power now, the power to destroy him, but not yet. The thought of immediate confrontation crossed her mind for only a second before she dismissed it. There was no satisfaction in a confrontation, no real victory in a heated argument or a dramatic scene. That wasn't enough for Charlotte. No, she wanted more. She wanted Adam to feel his life unravel slowly, methodically, without even realizing she was behind it. She wanted him to lose everything, not just the affair, but his career, his friends, his reputation. And when it was all gone, when he was standing in the ashes of the life he thought he had control over, she would be there, watching. The seed of a plan had already begun to form in her mind, and as she lay down beside him that night, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of calm wash over her. This was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Plan Begins. In the weeks following Charlotte's discovery of Adam's affair, nothing on the surface changed. She continued to wear the same warm smile, speak in the same soothing tone, and perform all the acts of a loving wife. Their home remained as tranquil as ever. Dinners were still prepared, and she still curled up next to him at night. If anything, Charlotte's affection for Adam seemed to grow. She was even more attentive to his needs, more supportive of his ventures, more in tune with his emotions. Adam, wrapped in his secret life with Emily, likely believed he had pulled the wool over Charlotte's eyes. He had no reason to think otherwise. She was playing her part perfectly. But beneath the facade of the perfect wife, Charlotte's mind was working tirelessly, orchestrating a plan that would take years to reach fruition. Her patience was absolute. There was no rush, no need for a dramatic confrontation. She wanted Adam's downfall to be so gradual, so painfully slow, that he wouldn't even notice his life crumbling around him until it was too late. The key to it all was making sure that nothing traced back to her. Her hands had to stay clean. Adam had to believe that his failures, his losses, were the result of his own decisions or, at worst, sheer bad luck. And she would start with the thing Adam valued most after his affair, his business. Adam and Charlotte had built their marketing agency together. It was their shared brainchild, a venture that had brought them financial success and solidified their place within their industry. But now, The business would be her first weapon. As co-owners, they had always shared decision-making responsibilities, dividing clients and strategies between them. But now, Charlotte saw an opportunity to subtly steer Adam toward his own professional demise. It began with small suggestions. Charlotte had long been the more cautious of the two when it came to business decisions, carefully weighing the pros and cons before committing to anything. But now, she feigned enthusiasm for riskier ventures. Over late-night discussions at their kitchen table, she would encourage Adam to consider investments that she knew were unstable, subtly pushing him toward clients who had reputations for being unreliable or difficult to work with. "I really think this new tech startup has potential," she'd say, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. "I know they're a bit green, but that could work to our advantage. We'd be their go-to agency, helping them grow from the ground up. Imagine the loyalty we'd build." Adam would look at the brochure, his brow furrowing slightly. "I don't know, Charlotte. Startups are risky. They could fold before we even see a return on investment. But think of the payoff if they succeed," Charlotte countered, her voice soft, persuasive. "We'd be the ones who help them get there. Plus, I think their product is innovative. It's worth the gamble, don't you think?" After a few minutes of deliberation, Adam would nod, convinced. He trusted Charlotte's instincts. They had built the company together after all. Why wouldn't he trust her judgment now? And so, it began. Each client Charlotte steered Adam toward seemed promising on the surface but inevitably fell through. Some dragged out projects for months, draining resources without delivering results. Others turned out to be financially unstable, defaulting on payments, and leaving the agency scrambling to recover. And each time, Charlotte played the part of the supportive partner, consoling Adam when deals fell apart. "This is just bad luck," she would say, her hand resting gently on his arm. "These things happen in business. You couldn't have known." But Charlotte had known. She had done her research, carefully selecting clients that were on the verge of collapse or embroiled in internal chaos. She never pushed too hard, never insisted on a particular client or investment. Just a nudge here, a suggestion there. And Adam, trusting his wife and believing in her supposed optimism, followed her lead every time. The sabotage was slow, methodical. No single decision was catastrophic. Adam's reputation within the industry didn't plummet overnight. Instead, small cracks began to form in his professional relationships. Colleagues and clients started to lose confidence in his judgment. Deals fell through, projects failed to meet expectations, and deadlines were missed. It was never enough to cause immediate panic, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. "Maybe we're just hitting a rough patch," Adam said one evening after yet another deal went south. He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "Every business has ups and downs, right?" "Of course," Charlotte replied, her voice laced with sympathy. "It's just a phase. Things will turn around soon." But things didn't turn around. Over the course of a year, the agency's growth began to stall. Their profits were still steady, but the momentum they had once enjoyed had slowed. Competitors were pulling ahead, snatching up clients that Adam and Charlotte would have easily won just a year ago. Adam's frustration grew, but Charlotte remained the picture of calm, always offering reassurance when he began to doubt himself. "Maybe we need to rethink our strategy," Adam said one night, pacing the living room. "We've been missing out on some big clients lately. I don't know what's going wrong." "We've been playing it safe," Charlotte said, her voice thoughtful. "Maybe that's the problem. What if we took a more aggressive approach? expanded into new markets, took on bigger clients. Adam paused, considering her suggestion. "It's risky," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "But that's how we built this company," Charlotte said, standing and walking over to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a comforting smile. "We took risks. We believed in our instincts, and it worked. Don't second-guess yourself now." It was exactly what Adam needed to hear. He nodded, his resolve hardening once again. Charlotte smiled to herself, knowing that she had just nudged him further along the path of his own destruction. The beauty of her plan lay in its subtlety. Adam never suspected her. Why would he? She was always by his side, offering support and encouragement, playing the role of the loyal wife who wanted nothing but his success. And because she never pushed him too far, too fast, every failure felt like an unfortunate coincidence rather than a deliberate act of sabotage. The stress began to take its toll on Adam. He spent more hours at the office, desperate to reverse the downward trend of the business. His time with Emily became more sporadic, though Charlotte never mentioned it. She didn't need to. She knew that the pressure Adam was under would eventually bleed into every aspect of his life, including his affair. Over time, Adam's reputation within the industry began to suffer. Clients whispered behind his back about his declining judgment, and competitors began circling like vultures, ready to snatch up any opportunity they could find. But Adam remained oblivious to the fact that the person he trusted most in the world was the one pulling the strings behind his slow downfall. And Charlotte, always one step ahead, continued to wait. This was only the beginning. The cracks in Adam's life were just starting to form, and soon those cracks would deepen until everything he had built, his business, his reputation, his relationships, came crashing down around him. But for now, she played the role of the loving wife, content in the knowledge that her plan was unfolding exactly as she had envisioned. It was a long game, and she intended to win. Part 2. The Downfall Begins. Chapter 3. The Deterioration. As the second year of Charlotte's plan unfolded, Adam found himself trapped in a relentless cycle of stress and despair. The once thriving marketing agency, a testament to their shared ambitions, was now a shadow of its former self. Clients who had once come to them for innovative solutions were now fleeing to competitors who promised fresh ideas and reliable execution. The clients Charlotte had nudged Adam toward were becoming more demanding, pushing for results that Adam struggled to deliver. Each evening he came home weary, his shoulders heavy with the burdens of responsibility. The subtle cracks in his confidence widened with each passing day. The stress affected his sleep, leaving him irritable and distant. Charlotte noted the changes in his demeanor, the way he rubbed his temples as he sank into the couch, how his laughter faded during their dinners together. She listened to him vent about the pressures of his work, feigning concern while savoring the turmoil brewing within him. "You're doing your best, Adam," she would say, her voice soft and soothing. "These things take time. Just keep pushing forward, and I know you'll pull through." Deep down, Charlotte relished the growing chaos in Adam's life, the mental anguish that crept into his everyday existence. Her nurturing facade served a dual purpose. It kept him from suspecting her involvement, while allowing her to manipulate the situation further. Adam, oblivious to Charlotte's machinations, began to spiral. His personal relationships suffered as a result of his increasing isolation. Friends who had once been a constant presence in their lives started to drift away, worn down by Adam's negativity and anxiety. Charlotte seized the opportunity to plant seeds of doubt in their minds. During casual gatherings, she would drop hints, framed as innocent observations. "You know, Adam's been really stressed lately. I sometimes worry about how much he's taking on. I hope it's not affecting his judgment," she would remark, her tone light yet laced with implications. At first, the comments seemed plan. As Adam's professional life crumbled, so too did the remnants of his social circle. Charlotte's manipulation reached new heights as she subtly introduced doubt into the minds of Adam's closest friends. The whispers became more pronounced. "Did you hear about Adam? He's been struggling at work," she would say with a casual smile, all while gauging their reactions. "Yeah, I've heard," one friend would reply, a hint of concern mixed with skepticism. "I hope he's okay. It must be tough to deal with all of that." Charlotte would nod thoughtfully, her eyes sparkling with a hidden satisfaction. "I worry about him. He's been under so much pressure lately. I think it's really taking a toll on him." Over time, the subtle seeds of doubt she had planted blossomed into rumors that spread like wildfire. Invitations to gatherings dwindled, and Adam's friends began to pull away, their laughter now replaced by awkward silences. Each time Adam reached out to make plans, he was met with vague excuses, the kind that only stung more as he felt the isolation deepening around him. Charlotte watched this unfold with a keen eye, her heart racing at the thrill of her success. She had carefully crafted a scenario where Adam was left standing alone on the precipice of despair. He hadn't even realized the extent of his isolation until it was too late. Friends who had once leaned on him began to sidestep their interactions, unsure how to navigate the murky waters of his dwindling reputation. "What's going on with everyone?" Adam asked one evening, confusion etched on his face. He had just returned from yet another failed attempt to connect with friends. "It feels like they're avoiding me." "It's probably just life getting in the way," Charlotte replied, her tone soothing. "People get busy, you know how it is." Adam nodded, but Charlotte could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The cracks were beginning to show, and while Adam was distracted by his unraveling professional life, Charlotte's hidden hand continued to work in the shadows. Despite her ever-constant support, Charlotte was meticulously orchestrating Adam's demise. She had crafted a perfect storm of isolation, making sure he would feel completely alone in his struggles. And in those quiet moments when he would glance at her, searching for reassurance, Charlotte merely smiled back, her heart full with the knowledge that her plan was nearing its ultimate conclusion. Soon, she would reveal the true extent of her manipulations, show him that all he held dear was slipping away because of her well-crafted strategy. But for now, she remained the ever-loyal wife, standing by him, masking the truth behind a perfect facade. The long game was nearing its pivotal point, and Charlotte was ready for the final act of her darkly intricate plan. Part 3. The Final Act. Chapter 5. The Realization. The shadows in the living room stretched long as the evening wore on, flickering softly from the lone lamp that struggled against the encroaching darkness. Adam sat slumped on the sofa, his head cradled in his hands, his fingers tangled in his hair. Time felt surreal. The last 3 years had become a blur of failures, disappointments, and confusion. His business had crumbled to dust. Friendships had disintegrated into whispers of betrayal, and even Emily, the affair that once brought him fleeting joy, had walked out, frustrated with the man he had become. Adam replayed the events in his mind, desperately searching for the moment it all began to unravel. How had he gone from a confident businessman, brimming with potential, to this shell of a man, lost and bewildered. Each thought crashed against the next, a cacophony of regret that refused to fade. Just then, Charlotte entered the room, her footsteps soft and purposeful. She appeared almost ethereal, a calm presence amidst the storm of his thoughts. Sitting across from him, she regarded him with an expression that was inscrutable, her eyes deep and unfathomable. "I don't understand," Adam finally managed to voice, benign. But as they were repeated in whispered conversations, they began to morph into something darker. Charlotte's friends would nod knowingly, exchanging glances that conveyed unspoken thoughts. Over time, the once close camaraderie Adam shared with his friends faded, replaced by a quiet distance and uncertainty. Meanwhile, the affair with Emily was becoming increasingly strained. The initial excitement had dulled under the weight of Adam's anxieties. Emily had once been a source of solace for Adam, an escape from the pressures of work and the unraveling of his life. But as he became consumed by thoughts of his failing business, he found himself unable to focus on the passionate connection they once shared. Charlotte observed this shift from a distance, satisfied as she watched the two drift apart. She did not intervene. Rather, she let the natural decay of their relationship take its course. After all, the affair was another piece in her carefully constructed game. As Emily grew frustrated with Adam's unpredictability and lack of attention, their secret meetings dwindled to nothing more than distant memories. "Why haven't we seen much of you lately?" Charlotte would innocently inquire when they encountered Emily at social events. "I hope everything is okay with Adam. He seems a bit preoccupied." Emily would smile politely, but Charlotte could see the flicker of annoyance in her eyes. The cracks in her relationship with Adam were starting to show, and Charlotte reveled in the knowledge that she was responsible for both Adam's and Emily's unraveling. As the year progressed, Adam's exhaustion mounted. Charlotte knew the emotional and physical toll that stress could take. He would often sit alone in their living room, staring blankly at the television, his mind miles away. She would bring him a glass of wine, taking care to present it with a warm smile, masking the thrill she felt at his vulnerability. "You need to take a break," she suggested one night, feigning concern as she curled up next to him on the couch. "Maybe we should go away for the weekend. A change of scenery might do you good." "Yeah, maybe," Adam replied, his voice distant. I can't stop thinking about the work I still need to do. There's too much on my plate." Charlotte's heart raced as she listened to him. This was the beginning of her master stroke, the full realization of how deeply she could influence his perception of reality. She would use his stress and fatigue to her advantage, ensuring he remained trapped in a cycle of failure. Chapter 4. The Isolation. By the time the third year rolled around, Adam's business was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. The once promising marketing agency was a mere shell of its former self. Adam had to make the difficult decision to let go of several employees, the faces of hard-working individuals who had poured their hearts into the company. The anguish he felt over these layoffs was palpable, but Charlotte was there to provide the comforting shoulder he desperately needed. "I know it's tough, but you had to make the right call for the business," she reassured him, brushing her fingers along his arm. "It's not a reflection of your worth as a leader. You're doing what's best for the company." Inside, however, Charlotte felt a surge of triumph. Each decision Adam made out of necessity only further ensnared him in her web. His prized clients had moved on to competitors, each loss exacerbating the ripple effect that left Adam with dwindling resources and a shattered reputation. Yet, through it all, Adam remained blissfully unaware of the true source of his misfortunes. Charlotte had perfected the art of appearing supportive, her demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos she was orchestrating. Friends and family admired her strength, praising her for how gracefully she bore the weight of Adam's misfortunes. She was the epitome of dedication, a steadfast partner standing by her husband through thick and thin. Yet behind closed doors, Charlotte thrived on the darkness of her, the weight of his confusion hanging heavily in the air. How did it all go wrong? Charlotte leaned forward, her face illuminated by the dim light, revealing a faint glimmer of something Adam couldn't quite identify. Was it satisfaction? "It didn't go wrong, Adam," she said, her tone laced with an unsettling calm. "It went exactly as I planned." His heart raced as he looked up at her, confusion morphing into fear. "What are you talking about?" For the first time, Charlotte allowed the mask she wore so skillfully to slip, her voice taking on a darker edge. "I've known about you and Emily since the beginning. I saw the messages, the late-night meetings. I knew, Adam." A chill ran down Adam's spine as he processed her words. He felt the blood drain from his face, the realization striking him like a physical blow. But he remained silent, grappling with the implications. "And I could have confronted you," Charlotte continued, her voice now a cool whisper. "I could have screamed, thrown things, filed for divorce. But where's the satisfaction in that?" She paused, watching as the truth settled over him like a heavy fog. "No," she murmured, her eyes gleaming with a fierce light. "I decided to take my time. I made sure your business failed. I made sure your friends abandoned you. I watched as you ruined your own life, piece by piece, all while thinking I was the loving wife at your side." The words sank in slowly, like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of disbelief through Adam. He stood abruptly, stumbling back until his back pressed against the wall. You did this?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper, raw with disbelief. Charlotte stepped closer, her presence both commanding and chilling. "Yes," that she replied, her voice a deadly whisper that cut through the air. "I did." Chapter 6. The Begging. The weight of her confession hung heavily in the air, thick and suffocating. Adam's knees buckled beneath him, and he dropped to the floor, a broken man kneeling before her. "Please," he begged, desperation clawing at his throat, making his voice tremble. "Please, Charlotte. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'll make it right. I'll do anything. Just forgive me." Charlotte looked down at him, her expression cold and unfeeling, a stark contrast to the warmth she had feigned for years. For a moment, she simply savored the sight of him in ruins, the man who had betrayed her reduced to this pitiful state, groveling on the ground. Each tear that slipped down his face was a testament to her victory, a culmination of her meticulously crafted plan. Yet without a word, she turned and walked toward the door, her heart untouched by his sorrow. "Charlotte," Adam cried, his voice rising in desperation, echoing through the hollow silence of their home. "Please." She paused, her hand resting lightly on the doorknob, and glanced back at him. "It's too late, Adam," she said softly, her voice devoid of any emotion, like a judge pronouncing a final sentence. "You're already finished." With those final words, she opened the door and stepped out into the night, leaving Adam behind, a broken man lost in the ruins of his life, the walls of his existence crumbling around him as he realized he was utterly alone, bereft of the love he had betrayed and the life he had taken for granted. Part 4, The Aftermath. Chapter 7, Walking Away. As Charlotte closed the door to their once shared home, a wave of exhilaration surged through her. It was as if she had shed an old skin, leaving behind the memories of a life that felt increasingly suffocating. The cool air outside hit her like a breath of fresh freedom, and for the first time in years, she felt light. The weight of Adam's betrayal no longer anchored her to a past filled with deceit and disappointment. In the months that followed, Charlotte embarked on the process of finalizing her divorce with meticulous care. Each document she signed, each meeting she attended, was steeped in a sense of purpose. The divorce was marked by an unsettling tranquility. Charlotte had chosen to keep things quiet and efficient. No messy confrontations or public displays of anger. Instead, her every decision was calculated, every move precise, as she methodically dismantled the life they had built together. The legal proceedings moved swiftly, as Charlotte's lawyer worked diligently to ensure her interests were protected. Charlotte remained a poised figure throughout, a picture of calm as she watched the life Adam had clung to slip away. When it was over, she emerged unscathed, her assets intact, while Adam was left with nothing, no business, no savings, and no support system to catch him as he fell. As the dust settled from the divorce, Adam's world began to collapse around him. The marketing agency he had once proudly built from the ground up was now a shadow of its former self. Clients who had once trusted him began to abandon ship, seeking stability elsewhere. They no longer wanted to gamble on a leader whose reputation had become marred by whispers of his infidelity and poor management. Charlotte had subtly influenced the narrative around him, ensuring that he would bear the brunt of their failing marriage in the eyes of the business world. With each passing day, Adam's sense of self deteriorated. He could feel the isolation wrap around him like a suffocating shroud as friends pulled away, unwilling to associate with someone who had become the subject of scrutiny and gossip. What had once been a badge of honor, a thriving business and a vibrant social life, turned into a shadowy echo of whispers and doubts. The relationships that once buoyed him now felt like distant memories, leaving him alone in his cruel, unrelenting world. But Charlotte, she was thriving. In the wake of their separation, she embraced her newfound independence, reconstructing her life on her own terms. Gone was the facade of the perfect wife. She allowed herself the freedom to explore new passions and to pursue opportunities that had long been shelved. She took up painting, rediscovering her love for colors and canvas, pouring her emotions into vibrant strokes that reflected her journey. She immersed herself in fitness, reveling in the strength of her body, a stark contrast to the emotional weight she had carried for so long. Each new venture was a step toward rediscovering who she was beyond the confines of her marriage. Charlotte's confidence blossomed as she navigated this new chapter, no longer burdened by the shadows of her past. She began to cultivate genuine friendships, surrounding herself with people who appreciated her authenticity. She stepped into social circles where laughter echoed freely, where she was valued for her spirit and resilience, rather than her association with Adam. In her heart, Charlotte realized that she no longer needed revenge to feel victorious. Her true victory lay in the freedom she had gained. She had played the long game and emerged triumphant. Each subtle step, she had taken a strategic move in a much larger plan. She had orchestrated her own escape, all while Adam remained blissfully unaware of the extent of her manipulations. As for Adam, he was left in a suffocating silence, surrounded by the wreckage of his life. Each day felt like an uphill battle. the weight of his mistakes pressing heavily on him. He found himself reflecting on what went wrong, replaying the moments when he had chosen betrayal over loyalty. It was a painful realization that struck him deeply. He had taken Charlotte's love for granted and believed she would always be there, steadfast and supportive. Now, as he sat in the remnants of his broken life, he understood too late that the one person he thought he could always rely on, the devoted wife he had betrayed, had been the one pulling the strings all along. In her calm demeanor, she had orchestrated his downfall with cold precision, ensuring that every choice he made led to his own destruction. The once secure foundation of his life crumbled, leaving only despair in its wake. In that moment of clarity, Adam's heart sank under the weight of his own hubris. He had underestimated Charlotte, and now he was left to confront the reality of his choices, a lesson learned too late, and one he would carry for the rest of his days. Epilogue. The victory years later, Charlotte walked into a quaint cafe, the sun casting warm rays through the windows, illuminating the space with a golden hue. She took a deep breath, inhaling the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries, feeling a profound sense of peace and contentment settle within her. She had moved on, found success in her career, and had built a life she loved, one filled with genuine friendships, purpose, and fulfillment. The shadows of her past had long faded, a distant memory that no longer held power over her. As she settled into a cozy corner with her coffee, flipping through the pages of a book, she caught sight of him. There he was, Adam, older, wearier, and undeniably more haggard than she remembered. He sat alone in the corner, a stark contrast to the confident man he used to be, looking defeated as he stared vacantly at his table. When their eyes met, time seemed to freeze. For a brief moment, the world around them faded, and the weight of shared history hung heavily in the air. Adam's expression spoke volumes, regret etched into his features, sorrow in the depths of his eyes, and defeat evident in his posture. It was a silent admission of the consequences of his choices, a recognition of the life he had lost. Charlotte felt a small smile form on her lips, a subtle, satisfied smile that held no malice but a sense of closure. It was the kind of smile that whispered, "I have moved on," a testament to her journey and triumph. She turned away, taking a sip of her coffee, allowing the moment to fade into the background of her life. She had won the long game, and with that victory came an overwhelming sense of liberation. In the cafe's warm embrace, she sat comfortably in her new reality, knowing she had chosen her path, free from the chains of betrayal and regret.